I remember the first time I heard them speak my name in the past tense. It felt like someone had yanked the ground out from under me, though I was still very much standing, barely on both feet. It was early spring, the kind of morning when the cherry blossoms are still bleary-eyed, pink petals clinging to wind-whipped branches. The sky was a clean slate of pale blue when I slipped into unconsciousness, an accident so sudden, so violent, I didn't have a chance to gasp. I'm told I was airlifted to St. Jude's Trauma Center, my neck pinned in a halo of plastic and steel, my skull split open like an overripe peach. They said I was lucky. You should be dead. That was Nurse Earnshaw's precise phrase, sugar-voiced but stern-eyed. If you even twitch a finger, you're lucky. I didn't twitch a finger for the first 17 hours. By then, my family had arrived, murmuring in the waiting room about insurance, about funeral arrangements, about my student loan balance. I lay unconscious, machines beeping, tubes in places I didn't remember. My mother sat in a recliner so stiff it might as well have been a coffin on legs. My father hovered at the foot of my bed, suit jacket crinkled as if he'd slept in it, phone glued to his ear. My sister flitted between them, tears on her cheeks, drawing diagrams of legal next steps on the sterile laminate table. They didn't know I could hear them. Nobody did. When I woke, it was to the sterile jolt of beeping monitors and a nurse's warning finger. "Now rest," she said. "You've got a long road." I tried to speak. My throat burned. Instead, a hoarse croak emerged, and she hustled out of the room, returning a moment later with water. My first words, sipped in small, painful gulps, were, "What day is it?" "Monday," she said. "March 10th. She smiled, relieved. "You've been out for 2 days. Family?" I rasped, eyes fluttering shut. The nurse vanished. I drifted away again. Over the next week, I hovered on the knife's edge between life and obituary. I heard more doctors mumble about guarded prognosis than I care to recall. Physical therapists measured my range of motion like artillery questionnaires. "Can you lift your wrist? Your foot?" The answer came in tiny twitches, my thumb flickering, my toes curling, proof I hadn't shuffled off this mortal coil. I overheard more conversations in that week than most people hear in a lifetime. Would the insurance cover rehabilitation? Should we sell the house? Did Uncle Walter already order a headstone? My sister wept quietly in the corner, while my father barked into the cell phone at someone. Somewhere? "No, she's not going to walk again. We need specialists." My mother hovered over the laptop, researching hospice care, ironically before I could even sit up. Then one morning, I woke and the beeping machines weren't counting beats but interrupting a different tide of voices. Funeral directors. I recognized my mother's voice, thin and panicked, saying, "It can't be tomorrow, it has to be Thursday." Then my father's low, furious rumble, "We have to tell them a date. The obituary goes to print tonight." My sister chimed in, "I'll bring the baby pictures. We'll read the obituary in the chapel. We have to do it right." Chapel? Obituary? I closed my eyes. My body felt like it was filled with cotton, my ribs aching as if someone had slammed a door on them. I realized I'd been lying in that bed for more than a week, motionless, invisible, but very much alive. I made a decision. I would leave that bed today. I would rise from those tubes and confuse the whole world. They called me the miracle case when I took my first unsteady steps with the help of a physical therapist named Carla, who half carried, half walked me down the sterile hallway, murmuring, "Good job, champ," like it was puppy training. By the end of that session, I'd covered 10 feet. At the end of the next 20, I practiced in secret, waking at dawn to stand shaky-legged before the bathroom mirror. My reflection was hollow-eyed, bruised but unmistakably mine. By mid-afternoon of the day before the funeral, I'd extorted a wheelchair from the nursing staff, under the pretense of wanting a change of scenery. They pushed me to the lobby. I stared at the gleaming lobby chairs, the floral arrangements that read "Get well soon," and the grand glass doors leading onto the hospital's tree-lined courtyard. I asked the volunteer attendant if I could be left alone for a minute. She stepped aside, and I wheeled myself out into the crisp air. Outside, the world was alive. Nurses crossing the pavement with charts, visitors conferring by the rose bushes, a man in a wheelchair wheel-scooting with reckless glee. I tested a step, then another, my legs trembling as if greeting old rivals. By the time I'd reached the garden gate, the attendant was sighing and nudging me back inside. "Time to return to room 13, sweetie." I let them push me back up the ramp. In the privacy of the elevator, I flexed my toes inside my slippers, squared my shoulders, and looked at my hospital gown in the mirror. Tomorrow was the funeral, my celebration of life, they'd called it. So I decided to crash it. I laid out my plan in my head between coughing fits and painkillers. I'd need an outfit that wasn't a hospital gown, something that said, "I'm here to deliver a eulogy of my own." My phone sat on the bedside table, still within reach of the nurse call button. With trembling fingers, I dialed my friend Marcus, whose number I'd memorized but rarely used. "Marcus," he answered. "Bleary." "Hey," I whispered. "Can you sneak in a care package? Clothes, shoes, belt, keys?" There was a pause. Are you okay?" "Better. Just trust me." I gave him the address and room number. "Don't bring flowers. Bring a black suit. I'll text you when I need you." "You're scaring me," he said, but agreed. The next morning, I awakened to a buzzing phone, several group chat pings. Dad, sister, cousins, all sweet condolence messages. Funeral time, 10 a.m. The chapel was booked at 9:30. The obituary, the one they drafted for the local paper, was pinned to the wall. Lydia Harper, 34, beloved daughter, sister and aunt, passed away March 15th after a brief illness. Known for her boundless generosity, sharp wit, and love of gardening, Lydia's life was a tapestry of kindness. She is survived by her parents, Martin and Elaine Harper, her sister Celia, and countless friends whose lives she brightened with her laughter. A celebration of life will be held at the Arlington Chapel on April 4th at 10 a.m. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations to the Children's Garden Foundation. I lay there, heart thudding. Children's Garden Foundation was my charity, spearheaded by me, quietly funded. They'd used my donation logo in the obituary. They thought I was a dead philanthropist. I laughed, soft, disbelieving. At 8 a.m., I texted Marcus, "Time to deliver." 5 minutes later, the door swung open. He stepped in, loaded down with a garment bag, loafers, belt buckle gleaming. He swallowed. "Do you have your IV?" "Not for long," I said. "Remember the nurse shift change at 8:30? I'll grab my drip bag. You'll get me in the wheelchair." He nodded, face pale but determined. "Let's do it." I slipped into a hospital robe under the gown, smooth black slacks, crisp white shirt, a charcoal jacket, and Marcus helped me buckle them. He laced my shoes, cinched the belt, and I checked my reflection, tombstone pale but alive. Then we slid out the door. I disabled the call button. Sheer terror buzzed in my chest, security cameras in every hallway, but I wheeled down to the elevator. A snoozing janitor, mopped by the nurse's station. I waved, he waved back. The doors closed behind us, carrying me toward the chapel. By 9:15 a.m., I'd navigated 2 elevators and a labyrinth of corridors. Outside the Arlington Chapel's side door, the sky was bright, clouds like promise puffs on a blue page. A staff-only sign swung on the hinge. I nudged it open, wheeled inside, and passed a row of wailing mourners outside the main sanctuary doors. I followed the corridor to the prep room, where they'd store chairs and flowers. Marcus pushed me behind a folding chair, and I darted inside as the funeral director. Mr. Rafferty, stiff suit, silver hair, stepped into the hallway. "Maintenance," he muttered, glancing around. "Just stacking," I said, voice calm. Father Rafferty returned to the chapel. I closed the door gently. I wheeled myself toward the storage closet and yanked off my hospital gown, revealing my suit. Under the row of jackets, I found a black tie I'd zipped in. I put it on. My heart galloped. At 9:25, Marcus peeked in. "Ready?" I nodded. "Let's crash our own funeral." Outside, the organist hit a somber minor chord. Voices drifted, my parents greeting well-wishers, my sister's sob-choked reply. They thought I was upstairs in the mortuary. Doctors had said to expect a delayed funeral due to paperwork, but they'd scheduled it today. They thought I'd never see it. We moved to the sanctuary door. Through the narrow window, I saw them, my father in a dark gray suit, white tie, offering tissues to a cousin. My mother in navy, mascara trailing, blinking. My sister Celia at the podium, adjusting a microphone, reading the obituary. Beloved daughter, sister, aunt, a life defined by kindness and generosity. Lydia Harper's spirit will live on in the gardens she nurtured and the hearts she touched. My chest felt as if it might burst with laughter or grief. I wasn't sure which. I turned to Marcus. Hand me the USB. He handed me a slim stick I'd slipped in this morning. I inserted it into a small panel beside the podium, behind a loose panel I discovered yesterday. The funeral director wandered by. I jammed it in and whispered, "Hit play." A hush fell. Celia's voice quivered on the podium. And now a short video montage. Suddenly the projector flickered to life. Images of me exploded on the screen. Me in high school valedictorian robe, me in college lab coat mixing chemicals, me at trade shows signing multi-million-dollar deals, me with employees celebrating milestones, me planting the first apple tree in my community orchard. Music swelled, a triumphant orchestral swell instead of the mournful organ. Gasps and murmurs echoed. The coffin in front of the dais sat open, draped in white linens, but it was empty, save for a single bouquet of lilies. In stunned silence, I wheeled out from behind the door, my suit jacket catching light, my black tie stark against crisp white shirt. Marcus followed, closing the door behind him. Celia's mouth dropped open. My parents spun in their chairs, jaws slack. The projector flickered back to a final slide. "You can bury my body, but not my life. I'm right here." Then the organ player banged the chord again. Offbeat, confused, turning to stare. I cleared my throat. "Hello, family." My voice was steady, loud. All eyes turned to me. I paused. The tension rippled through the chapel like a live wire. Then finally, hope glimmered in my mother's tear-filled eyes, and disbelief cracked on my sister's face. I smiled, raising my hand. "I thought we could all use a surprise today. Happy funeral day." The silence shattered into stunned laughter and tears. Chairs scraped as relatives scrambled to their feet. There, in the middle of the sanctuary, I stood, very much alive, watching my family's world spin around me. And that, dear reader, is where our story must pause. Because the real conversation, the one about forgiveness, about second chances, about the messy, beautiful complexity of family, begins now in the stunned faces turning toward me, in the love that flickers behind shock, and in the question on everyone's lips, what happens next? They froze as I stood in the center of the chapel, my own funeral turned theater, my body conspicuously absent from the coffin. Conversations rippled through the rows of chairs like an electric current. I let the silence stretch until it wrapped around us like heavy velvet. Finally, my mother's voice broke the hush. "Lydia," I stepped forward, hands splayed in a gesture of calm. "It's me." My sister Celia bolted down the aisle and flung her arms around me. Her shoulders shook with tears. I thought you were gone." I hugged her back, chest tight. "I know. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you." My father rose from his seat, face ashen. He reached out, uncertain, his hand trembling before it landed on my shoulder. "Why?" he asked, voice raw. I let him hold me for a moment, then gently disentangled myself. "Because I needed you to hear what you said, to see how close I came. And because sometimes a dramatic entrance is the only way to get people's attention." Murmurs rose. "What is happening? Is she okay? Should we call security?" The funeral director, Mr. Rafferty, hurried forward, suit straining with agitation. "Miss Harper, technically you're trespassing on funeral property." I raised a hand. "Mr. Rafferty, tomorrow I'll sort out the paperwork. Today I need my family's attention." He cleared his throat. "Well, you've certainly gotten it." In that moment, I saw my parents' faces change. Shock softened into relief. Guilt melted into understanding. I turned back to my family. "Mom, Dad," I began, voice steady. "You thought I was dead. But I'm alive. And I've been fighting for every step since that accident. You heard them say she didn't have a chance. Guarded prognosis. I heard you planning my funeral." My mother clutched her rosary, tears falling freely. We were so afraid. We couldn't bear to lose you again." I knelt before her. "I get that. But when you called me worthless failure, it cut deeper than any bruise. You wrote me off, long before I nearly died." Her head dropped. "I'm so sorry." I took her hands in mine. "I needed you to see that I'm not worthless, that I got back on my feet, built a life, saved companies, helped communities. But most of all, I need you to remember that I'm your daughter. Bring me back from death. Yes. But please don't ever wish me there." My father stepped forward, voice trembling as he squeezed my other hand. "We will never do that again." Celia wiped her eyes. "I'm the one who drafted the obituary," she confessed. "I collected photos, quotes, even asked Grandpa for a eulogy snippet. I'm so sorry. I hugged her. You did what you thought was right. Yesterday. Today we start over. At that, my extended family began filing toward me. One by one, cousins, aunts, uncles, each offering tearful embraces, apologies, laughter that bubbled up in relief. The minister, who'd been summoned to deliver my eulogy, stepped forward. His smile was weary but kind. "Miss Harper," he said, pulling a rusted old Bible from the pulpit, "I believe we have something more fitting than an eulogy today. How about a celebration of life? Starting with yours?" Laughter broke out, and applause rippled like waves. I stood tall in my black suit, heart pounding, mind clear. We spilled out of the chapel into a springtime courtyard, sunlight filtering through dogwood blossoms. My parents walked beside me, arm in arm, haggard but proud, and Celia flanked me on the other side. Behind us, the funeral guests had become a jubilant crowd, snapping photos, exchanging hugs. Grandpa Harper, who'd sat smoking a tremulous cigar in the back, stepped up and tapped his cane. "Never do that again," he boomed, voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "You hear me?" I nodded, tears shining. "I hear you." Then, in a spontaneous moment, he handed me the cigar back. "Here," he said, "for luck." I took it and smiled. Over the next hour, we transformed the funeral home's reception hall into a party, balloons replacing wreaths, sandwiches in place of funeral sandwiches, jazz trio where hymns had played. My favorite comfort foods lined the buffet: macaroni and cheese, fried chicken, green beans, chocolate bundt cake. I made my way through the crowd, stopping to hug former neighbors, college classmates, colleagues who'd come in spite of odd whispers in the office. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. "How did you pull that off? Were you scared? What's next?" they asked, and I answered honestly, sharing my crash course rehab, the days spent relearning to walk, the nights spent drafting business plans in the hospital's quiet. My sister leaned in. "You know, you should write a book," I chuckled. "Maybe, but for now I'm just writing the sequel, Life, Part 2. As sunset painted the sky in streaks of gold and lavender, my parents pulled me aside to the edge of the gathering. They handed me the obituary they'd drafted, now covered in red markers and blue corrections, my sister's edits turning eulogy lines into speeches for a startup launch, turning funeral hymns into victory anthems. "It's your story," my dad said. "Write it how you want." I folded the paper and slipped it into my jacket pocket. "I will." That night we walked home under string lights, someone had strung between the oak trees lining the drive. My mother's hand found mine. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm so glad you crashed your own funeral." I looked down at her. "Me too, Mom." The next morning the obituary appeared online, edited, updated, corrected. Newspapers ran an op-ed, Lydia Harper, from obituary to overcomer. Social media lit up with #LifeAfterLost. Colleagues at work buzzed. "We heard, glad you're back." My phone finally flooded with messages. Birthday wishes mingled with shock and relief. I sat at my desk, now settled back in my office, the orchid on my desk replaced by fresh daisies, and typed my own update. To everyone who thought I was gone, I walked in my own funeral and lived to tell the tale. Here's to months, years, and decades of showing up, dreaming big and celebrating every heartbeat. Thank you for believing in me. My second life begins today. I hit send. Then I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and listened to the gentle hum of the office. The real funeral, the final chapter was closed, and the party of life had only just begun.